This week's Parsha of Bamidbar, Parsha before the holiday of Shavuot, teaches us not only about the content of the Parsha, but also has tremendous ramifications for preparation of Shavuos, and by extension, the preparation for life. I'd like to speak about the Parsha in general through the eyes of one particular pasuk in the Parsha. It's a pasuk that's not a very famous pasuk. It's a pasuk that we barely take note of. And I think part of the beauty is how every single pasuk in the Torah teaches us layers upon layers of insight, of understanding, and of depth for our lives. Toward the end of the Parsha, the Torah tells us about the different jobs that the tribe of Levi had in order to prepare the Mishkan, the tabernacle, to be able to be carried throughout the sojourn in the desert. And it speaks about how they covered the holy items and how they carried it. In this particular section in chapter 4, Parak Dalet, Pasuk Tet Zayin, verse 16, source number 1, the Torah tells us, and this will be our major focus, B'ezrat Hashem today, the charge of Elazar, son of Aaron the Kohen, is the oil of illumination, the incense spices, the meal offering of the continual offering, and the anointment oil. The charge of the entire tabernacle and everything in it, of the sanctuary and its utensils. It seems to be a very, at first glance, very simple pasuk. This is what Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, was in charge of. Here there's a very interesting Ramban. The Ramban notes, in source number 2, that Elazar personally was appointed to carry the oil and the incense despite their great weight. Because after all, the oil and the incense wasn't that which would be sufficient for a day, but rather for a period of a year. A tremendous amount of oil, a tremendous amount of incense. And he was blessed with miraculous strength, because Apiderech HaTeva, according to natural law, it would be almost impossible for an individual, unless they really worked out, to be able to carry such thing. And the pasuk is, for those who hope to Hashem, renew their strength. Or one could say that Elazar was charged with personal responsibility for them, but not actually to carry them. It's these two interpretations of the Ramban that I'd like to try to examine a little bit more deeply, and more specifically what lessons that we can glean for our lives. I'd like to try to take a look among the Mefarshim of 4 different ways that we can approach the concept of Elazar carrying the items, the incense, the oils, etc. What lesson do we learn for our lives? So the first of the 4 approaches is found in the Pnimei Das Rav Blach. And he says, L'chorak Hashem, source 4, Mekevan Shaya Elazar Nasi Nasim, Elazar, after all, was the prince of the tribe of Levi. Lame Tilo La Dorim Elu B'Pratut. Why do we lichanyen behem? Why are we being told about what specifically he carried? V'od yoter lefi Ramban Dadarishami Katuv B'Rashi Hayal Elazar Batzmo Nosam, and according to the interpretation that Elazar himself was carrying them, Mashu L'Mala Mikoach Hanosh, beyond what the human capacity is to handle. V'Hashem Natan Lo Koach Kamor V'Kovei Hashem Yachlifu Koach V'Echsa Matim Lavodat Nasi Nasim. Is it appropriate that a nasi, that a prince, should be carrying this tremendous burden? How are we to understand this? So tells Rosh Hashiva, explains the following. V'nira shemivzanu l'medim, we learn from here. This is level number 1. Ki efshar liot manhig hamitzvah. You can't command others to be involved in a project. V'lo mifkad al acherim, and to be in charge in others. Im ba'atzmo eino sovel et sevel havodah. If you yourselves are not carrying the load yourself. V'zeh limud gadol, this is a tremendous lesson. Bavodas hakodesh, being involved in the service of that which is holy, or batzas Torah, and spreading Torah, v'havein, and understand this well. And this idea is echoed in 5b, in Rav Zaydel Epstein, in Sefer Ha'aros, where he says this is the major difference between the Manhigei Yisrael and Manhigei Umos Ha'olam, between the leadership of Klal Yisrael and the leadership of the nations. The leadership of the nations, the greater a person is, the less they are involved in working. They delegate to others. but rather Dafka Hagado Motzel Nachon Lisal Shichmo Masar Kaved Ad Shezikukim L'nei Sheh Bekocham Lachoz Masal Ke'elu, and that this is the very difference, that a Jewish leader is no say ba'ol im Yisrael mamish, literally carries the burden. And we see from here what we learn about Jewish leadership. And in fact, this is echoed in a very famous Chazal. The Yalkut Shimoni brings down that after the war, the first war of Ai, where when Achan had taken from the spoils the Jewish people, lost the war, right after the war of Yericho, of Jericho, and Yoshua sat on the ground in mourning, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Kum lecha, get up.